So I'm making this video because I wanted to gauge the appetite from anime fans for a manga or light novels version of director's commentary. So basically wondering if you are reading Skypiea arc of One Piece or the fourth great ninja war in Naruto, and you're wondering what was the author thinking at this moment, but not only the author but also the editor, because those two usually play the biggest roles in forming the story. That includes the artist, if you have an artist and they are separate from the author. And so with that being said, I know that I kind of have to make an argument as to why this might be something to consider, just so I can have a better understanding of where you all stand on it. So let's move to the power of context. So in cinema, the director's commentary gives us a behind-the-scenes look of footage, and they also give us detailed breakdowns of their creative choices. And usually this gives us insights into their symbolism, character development, and production struggles. And what I've noticed in author comments from manga or light novels, rather, is that we get some glimpse of this, but it's not a full picture. But every time we do get a glimpse of it, it usually is able to explain so much of what the story is actually about and what it's trying to do. And so basically it gives context. And of course we do also get interviews from these manga and light novel authors and art books from the manga authors and the occasional special edition notes. But imagine if every major release of a volume, or maybe every 4 volumes, like whatever, it depends on like an arc or the saga, or basically, if I'm being realistic, whenever the author wants to release this feature, when they feel comfortable that they wouldn't be giving too much information away, because unlike cinema, the manga is still ongoing, and so maybe you might say something that inevitably could cause people to be spoiled, and you don't want that. So basically, when they feel comfortable, when they can sit down and say, okay, I think I can reveal this much information about what I've done so far, and that telling people about the character progression and the symbolism in these moments will give people something to chew on and look out for future volumes as the story progresses, to see if there's any more connections to this or from what has been said before, so that their experience of reading the story becomes richer. So basically what they're actually going to physically do is release special books that will go through each manga page and have all relevant parties discuss the scene's intent, how well they view its execution, or what struggles did they go through basically while drawing or writing that particular page or chapter. And so it doesn't just satiate our curiosity, but it also gives us understanding. The second reason I can think of is that it humanizes the creative process, because what we hear from manga, usually weekly manga authors, is that it's a brutal endeavor to be mangaka, where they have long hours, tight deadlines, basically missing being with your families, and having immense pressure to always basically sell. And so what we can see is the artistic decisions that come from necessity as much as creativity. With this feature, basically we could see which choices really matter and in what way to the story. It can be something as hyper-literal as asking why a certain fight was choreographed in a specific way in the manga, or why did a character arc take a darker turn. And it goes beyond simply asking those questions, but basically seeing why was it executed in a specific way. Like, for example, if you used, as an author, you used a trope to execute this, when you could have probably, in the minds of somebody who's just sitting down watching or reading the story, you could have easily come up with a better way that's less, well, not say trope, because tropes can be used very well. So I'd rather say cliche, where it's like start to finish something that people can see that, oh, this is what you're trying to convey, and this is the most obvious way you could have conveyed it. You really couldn't think of anything to make it a little bit more unique to your story, like, or it could only be conveyed through the world building and everything that you have done in your story. And so while we can be thinking that the aspect that humanizes these authors could be learning that they simply had no time. It was 5 in the morning, they had been working 16 hours straight with no sleep, and the deadline was right next door. They're printing the pages at 6, and you have to submit something. And I feel that in light of that type of information, we would have far more of an understanding of the situations that the authors are put in, because it inevitably humanizes them. And also, I know this is a stretch, hopefully this could give rise to fans and basically everybody in general wanting the full, the author to finish the series. Just imagine the author has finished the series, but perhaps they can go back to their story and rewrite it the way they actually wanted to write it, maybe. And this is specifically for moments that are basically too cliche, or that they genuinely feel that they want to change, not because of maybe the ideological differences now, or they've changed, they think differently, or maybe they're politically different or whatever. But no, to respect the story and to keep everything the same in that sense, the heart of it the same, but to enhance it with their own creativity, to basically show it off and say that, oh, this is how I would have actually executed this moment if I had the time. Or maybe that's just coming from me, because throughout my career I just see so many authors basically mumbling and grumbling and groaning about how they don't like a certain scene, or how they don't like how they did something simply because of the time constraints they were under, and how they wish to change it, but it's too late now. So maybe it's just a personal feeling, but I want to hear what you guys think about that. And for the third reason, I would say that it expands, for the expanding of storytelling. And when I say that, I don't mean expanding the actual story. It's basically a question. Yeah, let me basically say that it's asking why is there filler, certain types of filler, why certain things are done. And this is more of a question towards the actual anime itself, because from what I have heard, when I'm watching an anime and stuff like that, I'm usually told, oh, don't watch that anime because they have a lot of cut content. And then when I go to check this cut content, I usually see that it's something that enriches the story or gives an insane amount of context to what is happening. And so I would want to know, why was certain moments cut, or why did they change the order of certain moments or arcs in the story? And primarily, when they made these changes, did they discuss this with the author? Because if they didn't, it's just going to show us that they really didn't understand why certain things were happening, and that's why they felt comfortable in taking it out, because they didn't know. And which, in my opinion, should be grounds enough to simply disregard that adaptation, because at that point it's just simply making its own product that cosplays as the story that you love or that the author wrote. And for my final reason, it moves back to the mangaka and the manga itself, things like that. Where doing this closes the gap between the author and the fans, because unless you're blind, you can see that the manga fans, or we can say manga and light novel fans, are one of the most passionate fans in all of media. And that passion can take many forms. Even if you are toxic in your passion, it's still passion in the end. It's just toxic. But unlike film, where you have essentially a certain level of engagement that does happen between fans and the creators, anime and manga creators are often distant. Their thoughts are only reaching the fans through rare interviews and leaks, sometimes through interviews that are talking about something else entirely, but have something to do with their own stories. And so what I see is that these fans have to run around piecing these interviews and these words that are said together to formulate a general opinion that the author, the editor, or whoever is relevant has towards the story and their work. And so with an official commentary system, fans wouldn't have to guess at the intent of the creators, but the creators themselves could guide them through their work in the way that they envisioned it. And the fact that in the West, this is not necessarily all that new. And when I say the West, I'm particularly talking about America, because you basically do see people are able to contact, not directly, but you're able to get a lot of information from George R.R. Martin about his books on A Song of Ice and Fire. And from his interviews and interactions with the fans, you can see that it has deepened the love that people have for his stories. And then you see entire channels that go through deep dives of symbolism and things that were shown in the story, because they have that information to look into. And so on one hand, I believed that, I believe that most people might think that it would take away from the story, because it doesn't allow people to essentially come up with their own theories on what happens. But that's not necessarily true. It's basically going to become more of an exercise in diving into the series more. And if you just want examples of this, you can just simply go watch a bunch of A Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones videos and channels that are based on the books, and you see that they have a lot of engagement even now, with the show having already ended, a lot of engagement with the source material. And because they have certain information on the level of intent that the author has, you see that their discussions are more deeper, rather than talking about the most superficial aspects of storytelling possible, which is like, plot holes and foreshadowing, which is like the most superficial and damn near nonsensical ways of judging stories and discussing about them. So essentially it doesn't leave so much into the air, but it grounds the fan base to actually conversing about and talking about things that actually matter within the narrative of the story, what the story is actually about, and it will allow them to ignore the things that are insanely superficial and have no strong bearing on the quality of the story. I think that's all I can come up with for reasons why we would want or need this. And basically, I want to gauge how much you would agree with that. Is it something that you are interested in? Are you tired of the superficial talks of story and writing and actually want to sink your teeth into what the author actually was talking about and expand from then on? Especially with anime and manga set to become one of the most influential storytelling mediums in the world, which the world is starting to wake up to, that it probably now is getting to the point that it deserves the same level of discussion and analysis and preservation as film does. Okay, with that, I'll see you next time.